In the next 60 minutes, I'm going to take you from zero German to being able to form real sentences at the A1 level. Sounds crazy, right? Trust me, it's doable. I know, German has a scary reputation with those super long words like Rindfleisch-Etikettierungsüberwachungsaufgabenübertragungsgesetz. Yes, that's a real word. And all those grammar rules, it can feel like a mountain to climb. But here is the truth. You don't need to be perfect to start speaking. If you just focus on the basics, the most common words, a few simple grammar rules, and forming sentence patterns, you will already be way ahead. It's not about learning everything, but learning smart. And that's exactly what we are going to do in the next 60 minutes. Now, I'm not a native German speaker, and this isn't meant to replace a proper German course. But I've done my homework on this. I've researched, learned, and figured out what actually works. And by the end of this video, I promise you'll be able to introduce yourself and speak simple, clear sentences in German. Let's get started. Let's start with the absolute basics, the building blocks of any language, the letters. Now, here is something you need to watch out for. German uses the same 26 letters as English, but that doesn't mean they sound the same. Most of them are pretty similar, but a few can really surprise you. So, let's go over the regular alphabet first. Please repeat after me slowly. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. But it doesn't stop there. There are 4 extra characters, 3 with 2 dots on the top. These are called the umlaute, and a character that looks like a B called the Z or the sharp S. This letter A sounds like E in pet. For example, Mädchen, kind of like Mädchen. To get the pronunciation right, I will play the sound for you, so you can repeat after this.
Mädchen.
This letter sounds like the I in bird or U in burn, but with rounded lips. Schon sounds a bit like schön, but with rounded lips. Again, I will play it so that you can get it properly.
Schön.
And this one is like the E in C, but again with rounded lips. For example, Uber, kind of like Uber, but with tighter lips. Repeat after this.
Über.
And the final one is Z. That's basically a double S sound, exactly like SS in English, like in kiss or hiss. You can even replace it with SS when writing if needed. For example, Straße sounds like Straße, which means street. So repeat after this.
Straße.
You are doing great so far. You know what? Since you are absolutely killing it, let's skip all the boring grammar stuff for now and jump straight into the speaking part. Let's learn how to greet someone. Let's start with the most common greeting. Hello. You know what it is, but if you look closely, it's with an A, not an E. And if you remember, A is A in German. So that's how it's pronounced too. Hallo. Now, if it's morning time, we add a little extra to a hello and say Guten Morgen or good morning. If it's evening, it becomes Guten Abend or good evening. And during the day, you can use Guten Tag, which means good day or good afternoon. Now, when it's time to say goodbye, you say Auf Wiedersehen, which literally means until we see each other again. That's the more formal way to say goodbye. But if you're in a hurry, you can simply say choose or bye. But life's not that simple, right? We can't just say hello and walk away every time. At some point, you will want to say a few more words. Maybe introduce yourself or ask something. And for that, we need to understand how sentences are actually made in German. And just like in English, most German sentences are built around 3 main parts: a subject, a verb, and an object. In most beginner sentences, the subject and object are usually just nouns or pronouns. So let's start with them. In simple terms, a noun is just a word that represents a person, place, thing, or even an idea, like man, woman, city, dog or happiness. In German, it's the same concept, but there is one big twist. Every noun has a gender, and it's not just for people or animals. Even objects like a table or the sun have genders, and there are 3 in total: masculine, feminine, and neuter. And every noun comes with an article that represents the gender. So we have the for masculine, the for feminine, and das for neuter. For example, the man, masculine, die Frau, the woman, feminine, and das Kind, the child, neuter. Now, here is where things get a little tricky. The gender need not always be what you expect. For example, girl is das Mädchen, and yep, it's neuter, not feminine. Or take die Sonne, the sun, which is feminine, and the Mond, the moon, which is masculine. I know, it doesn't always make sense. So the best way to handle this is to always learn the noun with its article and memorize them as one unit. For example, don't just learn house, learn das Haus. It's not easy, but don't worry. I have something that will make this part way easier for you. I'll share that towards the end of the video. But when it comes to the plural form, there is a slight relief. In plural form, the article stays the same, die. So it's die Männer, the men, die Frauen, the woman, and die Kinder, the children. But you will notice something here. The noun itself changes in the plural form. Again, there is no single rule for this. Sometimes you add E, sometimes you add EN, or sometimes ER. And other times, even the vowel inside the word changes. For example, the dish, the table, becomes die Tische, the tables. Die Frau, the woman, becomes die Frauen, the woman. And das Kind, the child, becomes die Kinder, or the children. Das Buch, or the book, becomes die Bücher. So just like with the article, it's best to learn the plural form together with the noun, case by case, word by word. That's the easiest way to get it in your head. And the final important thing you should know about nouns is that in German, all nouns are capitalized, no matter where they appear in sentence. So for example, the book in German is written as das Buch with a capital B. This is one of those little details that makes German text look different from English. Personal pronouns are words that we use to talk about people or things without naming them directly, like I, you, he, she, or it in English. And of course, German has them too. In the basic form, personal pronouns in German are ich or I, du or you, which is the informal singular version, or he, sie or she, es, it, wir, we, ihr, you, which is the informal plural version, like you all. And then C for they, C with a capital S for you, the formal version which is used for both singular and plural. There are 2 things to take note of here. One, there are actually 2 ways to say you, du and sie. Now, du is the informal version. You use it with your friends, family, or people of your age. Sie, on the other hand, is the formal version. You use it with strangers, older people, or in professional situations to show respect or politeness. And the second thing to know is about the multiple meanings of the word sie. It can mean she, or it can also mean they. And when written with a capital S, sie, it means the formal you. For example, sie is nett, she is nice. Sie sind nett, they are nice. Sind Sie nett with a capital S, are you nice, which is the formal you. In spoken German, they sound exactly the same. But in writing, that capital S makes all the difference. Now, let's talk about the connecting bridge between the subject and the object, the verb. Verbs are the action words. They tell us what's happening or what's someone doing. Those are words like eat, run, and learn. In German, the basic form of a verb is called the infinitive form. It's like saying to eat, to run, or to learn in English. Almost all infinitive verbs in German ends with en or sometimes just n. So that would be essen, laufen, or lernen. Now, we have already learned about the basic sentence structure: subject, verb, and object. And we have also talked about nouns, pronouns, and verbs. Now, let's put all of that together and start forming some simple sentences. Let's take an example. I am learning German, or ich lerne Deutsch. Here, Ich is the subject, which is a pronoun. Lerne is the verb, I'm learning. And Deutsch is the object, German. The structure is almost same as in English. Subject, verb, object. But here is something interesting. Even though the basic verb is lernen, we didn't say ich lerne Deutsch, right? We said ich lerne Deutsch. Why? Because in German, the verb form changes depending on the subject. This is what's called verb conjugation. And there is a method to find the correct conjugated form of the verb. You start with the infinitive form, which usually ends in en or n, like lernen. Then remove en to get the verb stem or learn and add different endings to this depending on who is doing the action. Now let's check this with an example. You can repeat after me. Ich lerne Deutsch. I'm learning German. Du lernst Deutsch. You are learning German. Lernt Deutsch. He is learning German. Sie lernt Deutsch. She is learning German. Es lernt Deutsch. It is learning German. Wir lernen Deutsch. We are learning German. Ihr lernt Deutsch. You all are learning German. Sie lernen Deutsch. They are learning German. And then the formal, Sie lernen Deutsch. You are learning German in the formal way. You can apply this pattern to most regular verbs. For example, machen, which is the German word for to do or to make, becomes ich mache, du magst, macht, sie macht, es macht, wir machen, ihr macht, sie or sie machen. But then there are also verbs that change their vowel additionally in the du and es forms, like sprechen, to speak. Ich spreche, du sprichst, spricht, sie spricht, es spricht, wir sprechen, ihr sprecht, sie sprechen. And finally, there are some verbs that don't follow this rule at all. And two of the most important such verbs that you will use all the time are sein or to be and haben, to have. Here is how they go. Sein or to be. Ich bin, du bist, sie, es ist, wir sind, ihr seid, sie or formal sie sind. And when it comes to haben or to have, ich habe, du hast, sie, es hat, wir haben, ihr habt, and sie or formal sie haben. Now let's look at some simple examples. Ich bin Student. I am a student. Du bist Student. You are a student. Is student. He is a student. Sie ist Studentin. She is a student. Es ist Student. It is a student. Wir sind Studenten. We are students. Ihr seid Studenten. You all are students. Sie sind Studenten. They are students. And sie sind Student. You, which is the formal you, are a student. And similarly, ich habe ein Auto. I have a car. Du hast ein Auto. You have a car. Hat ein Auto. He has a car. Sie hat ein Auto. She has a car. Es hat ein Auto. It has a car. Wir haben ein Auto. We have a car. Ihr habt ein Auto. You all have a car. Sie haben ein Auto. They have a car. And sie haben ein Auto, which is simply the formal version of you. Hope you get the idea. Alright. We have learned enough to move a little further from just saying hello. Now, let's actually address people and introduce ourselves in German. This is where things start getting fun. To introduce yourself, you can say, Ich heiße Srijit. I am called Srijit. Or you can also say, Mein Name ist Srijit. My name is Srijit. Again, notice the same structure. Subject, verb, and object. Now, in a normal conversation, the next step would be to ask the other person's name. And to do that, we need to learn how to ask questions in German. Now, the words or sentences used to ask questions in German mostly begin with W or W. So, they are often called W-Fragen or W questions. And the common ones are was or what, where or who, wo or where, wann or when, warum or why, wie or how, woher, from where, and wohin, to where. In such sentences, the W question word comes first, followed by the verb and then the subject. For example, if you want to ask someone's name, you would say Wie heißt du, which literally means how are you called, or Wie heißen Sie. Both means what's your name. One is informal and the other one is formal. And to answer this question, you can reply using the same structure we learned. Subject, verb and object. Ich heiße Srijit, which literally means I am called Srijit. You could also say mein Name ist Srijit or my name is Srijit. And when someone introduces themselves, a polite and natural way to respond is by saying freut mich or nice to meet you. Similarly, if you want to ask someone how they are doing, you say wie geht es dir, which means how are you. And in a formal setting, you would say wie geht es Ihnen. But in day-to-day conversations, people usually shorten it to wie geht's. It means the same thing, but it's just sound more natural and casual. If someone asks you this, then you could reply with something like good danke or good thanks, or even better, mir geht's gut danke. I'm doing well, thanks. And then ask back und dir. You can also ask und Ihnen, which is the formal version of it. If the person is not leaving and wants to talk more, then you can ask wo wohnst du? Where do you live? Which is the informal version. Or wo wohnen Sie? Where do you live? Informal. Again, notice the same pattern. Question word wo, verb wohnst or wohnen, and then subject du or sie. But if someone asks you wo wohnst du? Well, one way to answer that would be to literally grab their hand, walk with them all the way to your house and say here. Or you could just learn how to answer that question in German using the same sentence structure that we learned earlier. Subject, verb and object. And say ich wohne in Stuttgart. I live in Stuttgart. The same pattern works for other W questions too. Let's see some more common situations. Woher kommst du? Where do you come from? The informal version. Or woher kommen Sie? Which is the formal version. And you can answer with ich komme aus or I come from. For example, ich komme aus Indien. I come from India. Or take this one. Wohin gehst du? Where are you going? Informal one. Or wohin gehen Sie? And the answer would be ich gehe nach. I am going to. For example, ich gehe nach Hause. I am going home. If there is another element like time, place or thing in the sentence, it usually comes after the subject in question. For example, warum lernst du Deutsch? Why are you learning German? Here du is a subject and Deutsch is the element that comes after it. Now this order where the question word comes first, then the verb and then the subject, that's only for W questions or W-Fragen. But for yes or no questions, the order changes. Here the verb comes right at the beginning, followed by the subject and then the rest of the sentence. For example, lernst du Deutsch? Are you learning German? So whenever you hear a question starting with a verb, that's your clue. It's a yes or no question. And when someone asks you a yes or no question, you can simply answer with ja or yes. You can also add a short clarification like ja, ich lerne Deutsch. Yes, I'm learning German. Unless you want to say yes to everything, you will need to know how to say no. And in German, there are two ways to do that. Nein and nicht. Now, here is the difference. Nein is what you use to simply answer a yes or no question. It means no and stands on its own. For example, kommst du? Are you coming? Nein, that's it. Short and simple. But nicht works inside a sentence and is used to negate it completely. You use it when you want to say something is not happening or not true. For example, ich lerne nicht. I'm not learning. Being able to introduce yourself and ask questions about the other person is super important at the A1 level. So let's practice a few common question and answer patterns that you will use when you meet someone for the first time. So please repeat this after me. Hey, wie geht's dir? How are you? Mir geht's gut, danke. Und dir? I'm good, thanks. And you? Mir geht's auch gut, danke. I'm good too, thanks. Wie heißt du? What's your name? Ich heiße Anna. Und du? My name is Anna. And you? Ich heiße Srijit. Freut mich. My name is Srijit. Nice to meet you. Freut mich auch. Nice to meet you too. Woher kommst du? Where are you from? Ich komme aus Deutschland. Und du? I'm from Germany. And you? Ich komme aus Indien. I'm from India. Und wo wohnst du? And where do you live? Ich wohne in Stuttgart. Und du? I live in Stuttgart. Ich wohne in Berlin. I live in Berlin. Was magst du? What do you do? Or you can also ask, was magst du beruflich? What do you do professionally? Ich bin Studentin. I am a student. Und du? Ich arbeite als Ingenieur. I work as an engineer. Und hast du Geschwister? Do you have siblings? Now this is a yes or no question. And Anna replies, Nein, ich habe keine Geschwister. No, I don't have any siblings. Und du? Ja, ich habe einen Bruder und eine Schwester. Yes, I have a brother and a sister. Sprichst du English? Do you speak English? Ja, ich spreche Englisch. Yes, I speak English. Or you can also say, Nein, ich spreche kein Englisch. No, I don't speak English. And finally, if you're about to leave, you can simply say Tschüss or Auf Wiedersehen and walk away and find the next person to repeat these questions and practice your German. But jokes apart, at the A1 level, most questions are about personal information and everyday life. So practicing such simple question and answer patterns will really help you build confidence. If you want to take a quick break, now is a good time. Because next we are diving into cases. And yeah, this part can be a bit tricky, but don't worry, we will go step by step. So, in German, cases show what role each word plays in a sentence, or in simple words, who is doing the action and who is receiving it. And depending on that role, the articles, pronouns, and sometimes even the noun itself change their form. Let's look at them one by one. Nominative case. This one is easy. It's used for the subject doing the action. The articles and pronouns we have seen so far were all in the nominative case. For example, der Mann kocht. The man cooks, or the man is cooking. Here, the man is the one doing the action of cooking something. So it's nominative. So whenever you see who or what is performing some action, that's nominative. Now, the accusative is used for the direct object, the thing that's directly affected by the action. For example, the man cooked then rice. The man is cooking the rice. Here, the man is the one cooking the rice. So he stays in the nominative form. But the rice is the thing being cooked. So it changes to accusative and becomes then rice. That's the key thing to remember here. The masculine article der changes to then in the accusative form. Everything else stays the same. The feminine die stays die, the neuter das stays das, and the plural die stays die. You remember the personal pronouns we learned earlier. Along with articles der, die, das, the accusative case also has an impact on pronouns. So in the accusative form, ich becomes mich, du becomes dich, becomes in, sie stays as sie, es stays es, wir becomes uns, ihr becomes euch, and sie or the formal sie stays the same. Now let's see them in action in some sentences. Ich sehe dich, I see you. Ich is the subject in the nominative case and dich is the object in the accusative case. So instead of ich sehe du, it becomes ich sehe dich. Similarly, ich sehe ihn, I see him. Ich sehe sie, I see her. Ich sehe es, I see it. Ich sehe uns, I see us. Ich sehe euch, I see you all. Ich sehe sie, I see them. And ich sehe sie, I see you in the formal way. Now, if the accusative case is for the direct object, then dative case is used for indirect objects. Basically, when something is done to or for someone. And here is how the article changes in dative. The masculine der becomes them. The feminine die becomes der. And the neuter das becomes them. And in plural, die becomes then. And the noun usually gets an extra n at the end. For example, der Mann kocht them Kind, then rice. The man cooks the rice for the child. Here, der Mann is the one doing the action. So he is in the nominative case. Then rice is what's being cooked or the direct object. So that's accusative. And them Kind is for whom the action is done or the indirect object. So it's dative. Since Kind is neuter, das Kind, it changes to them Kind in the dative case. Now, just like in accusative cases, personal pronouns change their form in dative too. So ich becomes mir, du becomes dir, becomes im, sie becomes ihr, es becomes im, wir uns, ihr euch. The sie with the small s becomes ihnen with the small I, and Sie with the capital S becomes Ihnen with the capital I. Now let's look at some examples. Ich gebe dir das Buch. I give you the book. Ich gebe uns das Geschenk. Ich gebe euch das Geschenk. I give you all the gift. So, to sum it up, who does it? That's nominative. What's it? That's accusative. And who gets it? That's dative. Now, let's talk about prepositions. Those small but powerful words that connects ideas in a sentence. Like in, on, to, or with. Remember when we answered questions like woher kommst du or wo wohnst du? The answers were ich komme aus Indien or ich wohne in Stuttgart. Here aus and in are prepositions. Before we jump into the most common ones, there is something important to remember. Some prepositions in German always take the accusative case and some always take the dative case, and a few can take both depending on the situation. So when you learn a preposition, make sure you also learn which case it uses. Here are the most common accusative only prepositions that you will learn at A1. Für, for. Ich habe ein Geschenk für dich. I have a gift for you. Here für is an accusative preposition. So the pronoun du changes to dich. Durch or through. Wir gehen durch den Park. We are walking through the park. Park in German is der Park and its accusative form is den Park. Ohne, without. Das Kind spielt ohne den Ball. The child plays without the ball. Now another one is gegen. Gegen usually means against, but it can also mean around when talking about time. For example, ist gegen die Idee. He is against the idea. Wir kommen gegen 8 Uhr. We will arrive around 8 o'clock. Now, can also mean around, but it's mainly used to talk about a specific time or movement around something. For example, wir sitzen den Tisch. We are sitting around the table. The film beginnt 7 Uhr. The movie starts at 7 o'clock. And there are some prepositions which always take the dative case no matter what. And the important one among them is mit or with. So in Ich fahre mit dem Bus, the word Bus is neuter or das Bus. But since the preposition mit always takes the dative case, das changes to them. So it becomes mit dem Bus. And in Ich spreche mit Freunden, I talk with friends, the word Freunde or friends is plural. When it comes to plural in dative, most nouns add an extra n. So it becomes Freunden. That's why it's mit Freunden and not mit Freunde. Zu, to. Ich gehe zum Arzt. I'm going to the doctor. Here zum is simply a combination of zu plus dem. The word Arzt or doctor is masculine. Der Arzt. Since zu always takes the dative case, der changes to them and zu plus them becomes zum. So we get zum Arzt. Similarly, mein Sohn geht zur Schule. My son goes to school. Here zur is a combination of zu plus der. Schule or school is feminine. Die Schule. And in the dative case, die becomes der and zu plus der becomes zur. So zu der Schule becomes zur Schule. You get the idea, right? Now let's see a few more dative prepositions. Nach, after. Ich schlafe nach dem Essen. I sleep after eating. Von, from. Ich komme vom Bahnhof. I'm coming from the train station. Now vom is simply von plus them and sie kommt von der Arbeit. She's coming from work. Now Arbeit is die Arbeit, feminine. So in dative, it becomes der Arbeit. Bei, at or with. Ich wohne bei meinen Eltern. I live with my parents. Ist bei der Arbeit. He is at work. Aus, from or out of. Nimmt das Buch aus der Tasche. He takes the book out of the bag. And then there are two-way prepositions which can take either dative or accusative depending on whether you are talking about a particular location or a moment where something is going. The most common two-way prepositions are in, an and auf. Let's take in as an example. Ich gehe ins Restaurant. I'm going to the restaurant. Here we are talking about movement. You are going somewhere. And in this case, in takes the accusative form. The word restaurant is neuter. das Restaurant. And in the accusative case, das stays as das. So in plus das Restaurant becomes ins Restaurant. Now, once you're already at the restaurant and you want to tell someone where you are, you say, Ich bin im Restaurant. I am in the restaurant. Here, we are talking about a location, not movement. So in takes the dative case. And since das Restaurant in the dative becomes them restaurant, in plus them restaurant shortens to im restaurant. So in short, with location, dative, and with movement, accusative. Now, you might be the most future-minded person out there, always thinking ahead, planning your next move. But sooner or later, you will have to talk about something that's already happened. Like when someone asks, what did you do on your weekend? And the best way to talk about your last weekend in German is by using the perfect tense. Now, don't worry, it sounds fancy, but it's actually really simple. The perfect tense or present perfect is made up of just two parts. Remember the verbs haben and sein we talked about earlier. You will need one of them as the auxiliary verb in the first part. And the second part is the past participle of the main verb, and that one always goes to the end of the sentence. So the sentence structure in the past looks like this. Subject plus auxiliary verb, which is haben or sein, and past participle form of the verb. For example, Ich bin ins Restaurant gegangen. I went to the restaurant. Here bin is the ich form of sein and is used as a helping verb. And gegangen is the past participle of gehen or to go. Another one, wir haben viel gegessen. We ate a lot. Here haben is a wir form of the verb haben, which is used as the auxiliary verb, and gegessen is a past participle form of essen or to eat. So when do you use sein and when do you use haben? Here is a simple rule. If the verb shows movement like going, coming, leaving, or a change of state like waking up, falling asleep, becoming something, you usually use sein. For example, ist spät gekommen. He arrived late. There is movement. He's arriving somewhere. So we use sein. And since it's the correct form of sein is ist. For pretty much everything else, you use haben. For example, ich habe gestern gearbeitet. I worked yesterday. Here, there is no movement or no change of state. It's just an action. So haben is the right choice. Now to the second part. How do you form those past participles? For most regular verbs, it follows a super easy pattern. Take the verb stem, add ge at the beginning and t at the end. So basically ge plus stem plus t. Consider the word spielen or to play. The stem is spiel and it becomes gespielt. Similarly, machen becomes gemacht. Then you have verbs ending in ieren like studieren to study or telefonieren to make a phone call. These never take the prefix ge in the past participle form. So they become studiert or telefoniert. Now for some irregular verbs, the past participle form often ends in en. Sehen to see becomes gesehen. Essen to eat becomes gegessen. And for some verbs, the vowel inside the verb also changes in the past participle form. For example, gehen or to go becomes gegangen. Trinken to drink becomes getrunken. And finden to find becomes gefunden. Now, there are some special verbs which are verbs with separable prefixes like anrufen, an plus rufen, to call. In this case, the prefix ge sneaks right in the middle when forming the past participle. So it becomes angerufen, angerufen. Now another verb is aufstehen or to get up, and in the past participle form it becomes aufgestanden or got up. Another one einkaufen or to shop. In the past participle form it becomes eingekauft or shopped. And then there are some verbs that start with an inseparable prefix such as be, ver, end and sir. And they also don't get the ge prefix. For example, besuchen to visit becomes besucht in the past participle form. Verstehen to understand becomes verstanden, understood. Erzählen to tell becomes erzählt, told. I know this can feel a bit complicated at first, but honestly, the best way to get it right is to learn the past participle together with the verb. Because if you do, then the next time someone asks what you did over the weekend, you will know exactly how to answer in perfect form. Now, by this point, you already know enough to make simple conversations in German, especially if you can pick up some basic vocabulary. But if you really want to sound more natural, more like how people actually speak, then you can't skip learning modal verbs. Modal verbs are like small helpers in your sentences. They let you say things like what you can do, what you must do, or what you want to do. At the A1 level, the most common modal verbs you will learn are können, or can, or to be able to, müssen, must or have to, and wollen, want to. And later you will also learn dürfen, maybe or be allowed to, and sollen or should. But let's stick to the main three for now. Just like regular verbs, modal verbs also change their form depending on who is doing the action. For example, können becomes ich kann, du kannst, sie es kann, wir können, ihr könnt, and sie or the formal sie können. Müssen change to ich muss, du musst, sie es muss, wir müssen, ihr müsst, sie and the formal sie müssen. And wollen becomes ich will, du willst, sie es will, wir wollen, ihr wollt, and sie and formal sie wollen. But here is something different about them that you need to remember. In a sentence with a modal verb, the main verb gets pushed to the end of the sentence in its infinitive form. For example, instead of saying ich spreche Deutsch, I speak German, you would say ich kann Deutsch sprechen. I can speak German. Here can is the conjugated form of können for ich, and the regular verb sprechen moves to the end of the sentence. Another example. Du musst heute arbeiten. You must work today. Musst comes from müssen, and arbeiten or to work again goes to the end of the sentence. And this is actually really helpful when you're just starting to speak German. You can begin with the right modal verb, and even if you forget the main verb for a second, that's okay, since it always comes at the end of the sentence. So in summary, subject plus conjugated form of the modal verb plus infinitive form of main verb at the end. Now, let's move on to a few more important topics that are also part of the A1 level, especially the ones that help you react to different situations in real life. The imperative is basically how you tell someone to do something, like giving an order or instruction. In informal situations, you just use the verb stem. That's the infinitive without the en at the end. For example, komm, come, from common, warte, wait, from warten. When you want to be polite or talking to someone you don't know well, use the infinitive form plus sie, and you can also add bitte or please to sound extra polite. For example, sprechen Sie bitte langsamer. Please speak more slowly. And if you're talking to more than one person, use the normal conjugated verb form for ihr. For example, kommt ihr, you all come here, wartet mal, wait a moment you guys. Possessive adjectives are super useful because you can use them before a noun to show ownership. These are words like my, your, his, her, our, etc. In German, they look like this. My, mine. Your, dein. His, sein. Her, ihr. Our, unser. Your, euer. Der, ihr. And formal your, ear. So far, pretty simple, right? But here is where it starts to get a little tricky. Just like the articles the, thus change with the gender and case of a noun, the possessive words also change their endings. That's why my father and my mother won't both be mine in German. In the nominative case, feminine and plural nouns take an e at the end. So mine becomes meine. And masculine and neuter ones, they just stay as mine. Now, when the noun becomes the object, that's the accusative case. And here, the masculine form gets an extra en at the end. So, instead of saying ich sehe mein Vater, you say ich sehe meinen Vater. I see my father. Here, mein Vater is the object. So, it changes to meinen Vater in the accusative case. Similarly, ich kenne deine Mutter. I know your mother. Mutter is feminine. So it stays the same, just adds the normal E. Wir besuchen unsere Freunde. We visit our friends. Now, Freunde is plural, so it also ends with E. So the key difference between the nominative and the accusative form is this. Only the masculine one changes from mein to meinen. Everything else stays exactly the same. Now the dative case often comes after certain verbs like helfen, to help, geben, to give, danken, to thank, or also prepositions like mit, von, bei, and zu. This is where the endings change the most. So masculine and neuter gets em, feminine gets er, and plural gets en. Now let's look at a few examples. Ich spreche mit meiner Schwester. I speak with my sister. Now Schwester or sister is feminine. And because of the preposition mit, the noun goes into the dative case. So the possessive word mein takes the er ending and becomes meine Schwester. Now let's look at an example where both accusative and dative come together. Ich gebe meinem Bruder meinen Ball. I give my brother my ball. Now ball or ball is masculine, the ball, and it's the object, the thing which is being given. That's the accusative case. So it becomes meinen Ball. Bruder or brother is masculine, the Bruder, and he's the one receiving the ball. That's dative. So mein becomes meinem Bruder. So together we get Ich gebe meinem Bruder meinen Ball. Now that we understand how mein, dein, sein and all those possessive words work, let's look at something very similar. Ein and kein, because all three behave almost the same way. In addition to the definite articles, the, and thus, German also has the indefinite article which corresponds to a or an in English. We say a man, a woman, a child, right? So ein works just like the indefinite article a in English. Now kein is used to negate nouns that have an indefinite article or no article at all. Think of kein as the opposite of ein. And just like the, thus, it has to match the gender and case of the noun. So in nominative form, a man becomes ein Mann. A woman becomes eine Frau. A child becomes ein Kind. Similarly, kein Mann or no man or not a man, keine Frau, no woman or not a woman, and not a child becomes kein Kind. Notice how the feminine form adds an E at the end. So it's eine Frau and keine Frau. And the same thing happens in the plural too. But here is the thing. Ein itself doesn't have a plural form. You can say keine Kinder, no children. But you can't say ein Kinder, because no one says a children in English either, right? So if we put all that in sentences, we get Ich habe kein Auto. I don't have a car. Er ist kein Lehrer. He is not a teacher. Sie hat keine Kinder. She has no children. And just like articles and possessive adjectives, ein and kein also change depending on the case. If noun is in the accusative form, they take the accusative endings. And if it's in the dative form, then they take the dative endings. Simple as that. They all follow the same pattern. Let's look at a few examples. Nominative. Das ist ein Mann. That's a man. Das ist keine Frau. That's not a woman. Similarly for accusative, ich sehe einen Mann. I see a man. Ich sehe keinen Mann. I don't see a man. And finally with dative, ich spreche mit einem Mann. I'm talking with a man. Ich spreche mit keinem Mann. I'm not talking with a man. Or I'm talking with no man. Here is a complete table with ein, kein and mein across all the cases. And you can see how they all follow the exact same pattern. And don't worry if this feels like a lot right now. I will leave you with a quick starter guide that has all this information neatly organized. So you can revisit it anytime and slowly get it memorized. When forming sentences in German, there is one simple rule that will instantly make you sound more natural. Time, manner, place. That means after the verb, you usually say when something happens, then how it happens, and then finally where it happens. For example, ich gehe heute mit dem Bus nach Hause. I'm going home today by bus. Here heute tells when, mit dem Bus shows how, and nach Hause tells where. Simple, right? Now you're getting better and better at forming individual sentences. But what if you want to connect two sentences? That's where conjunctions come in. Little words like and, but, or in English. In German, the most common ones you will use at the A1 level are und or and, aber, but, oder, or, and then. Because, for example, ich lerne Deutsch und ich arbeite. I learn German and I work. Ich wohne in Berlin, aber ich komme aus Indien. I live in Berlin, but I'm from India. Trinkst du Kaffee oder Tee? Do you drink coffee or tea? Ich bleibe zu Hause, denn ich bin müde. I'm staying at home because I'm tired. Now, then is one way to say because in German, but there is another super common word, while. For example, ich bleibe zu Hause, weil ich müde bin. I'm staying at home because I'm tired. Both then and while mean the same thing. But there is one key difference. When you use while, the verb moves to the end of the sentence, just like with modal verbs. Don't worry if that feels tricky right now. That's something for later. For now, it's totally fine to use then, since it keeps a normal word order and is much easier to get used to. Each of these topics could easily be a full lesson on its own, but even just knowing about them already gives you a huge head start. Now, let's talk about something super practical, vocabulary. Even if you know all the grammar rules, you can't really say much without the right words, right? So let's go through some of the most useful words you will need for everyday life in Germany. Let's start with numbers, because at some point you will run out of fingers to count on. You will need them to tell the time, talk about your age, ask prices, or say quantities. Here are the numbers from 0 to 10. You can just repeat after me. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. 11 is 11 and 12 is 12. From 13 to 19, things get much easier. There is a clear pattern. You just take the number and add 10, which literally means 10. So 13 becomes 13 or 310. 14 is 14, 15 is 15, and so on. All the way to 19, 19. Now, after 20 is where it starts to get a little tricky, especially for English speakers. In German, 21 isn't 21. It's actually said the other way around. 1 and 20. 21. And the same pattern continues. 22 is 22. 23 is 23. And it keeps going on like that all the way up. I know, German can really mess with your brain sometimes. But don't worry, there is one golden rule to keep things simple. Say the smaller number first, then the word und, and then the larger base. That's how it works for all the numbers between 21 and 99, except for the clean multiples of 10. Now for the multiples of 10. 20 is 20, 30 30, 40 is 40, 50 is 50, 60 is 60, 70 is 70, 80 is 80, 90 is 90, and 100 is 100. A few more useful numbers before we wrap up. 101 is 101 and 1000 is 1000. But for now, as a beginner, you don't need to go that far. You will mostly use numbers for everyday things like age, time, and prices. So learning up to 100 is more than enough to get you started. Another really common place that you will use numbers is when telling the time. And there are two main ways to tell time in German. The first one is the official way, the kind you will hear in timetables, announcements, or anything formal. And here you simply say the hour and minute with the word Uhr in between. For example, 14:30 becomes 14:30, literally 14:30. And 9:05 means 9:05. And to ask for the time in German, you can say wie spät ist es or wie viel Uhr ist es. Both mean what time is it. And when answering, just start with Es ist and then say the time. For example, Es ist 10:30. It's 10:30. Now, when you're talking about the exact time something happens, you will need the preposition So you'd say 7 Uhr at 7 o'clock, or the film beginnt 20 Uhr 15. The movie starts at 8:15 p.m. But in everyday conversations, we usually don't say the full time like that. Instead, we use fractions of the hour just like in English. For example, Viertel nach 2 means 2:15. Here Viertel means quarter, nach means after, and 2 means 2. Similarly, Viertel vor 3 means 2:45. Now, here is the part that confuses almost every beginner learner. When a train departs at 2:30, it actually means 2:30 or 2:30, not 3:30. So yeah, keep that in mind, or you might end up waiting at the station for an hour, wondering why the train never showed up. Now, let's talk about the days of the week, or Wochentage in German. You can repeat after me. Montag, Monday, Dienstag, Tuesday, Mittwoch, Wednesday, Donnerstag, Thursday, Freitag, Friday, Samstag, Saturday, and Sonntag, Sunday. All the days of the week are masculine. So it's the Montag, the Dienstag, and so on. But in normal conversation, we usually drop the article. And just like when talking about time, if you want to say on Monday or on Tuesday, you use the preposition which actually comes from an plus them in the dative form. So am Montag means on Monday, am Dienstag means on Tuesday, and so on. For example, wir haben am Mittwoch Deutschkurs. We have German class on Wednesday. In German, when we talk about dates, we use ordinal numbers. Just like saying first, second, or third in English. You wouldn't say 10th of December, right? You'd say 10th of December. Now, German does the same thing, but it just has its own way of adding that little th ending. From 1 to 19, ordinal numbers end with ten. For example, am 7. März on the 7th of March, am 3. Juli on the 3rd of July. But from 20 onwards, they end with sten. For example, am 21. Oktober on the 21st of October, am 30. April on the 30th of April. So just remember this simple rule. 1 to 19, ten. 20 and above, sten. And of course, along with the days, you will also need to know the months or Monate in German. So repeat after me. Januar, Februar, März, April, Mai, Juni, Juli, August, September, October, November, and December. Simple, right? Most of them look almost the same as in English, but just with that little German twist in pronunciation. Also, all months are masculine. So it's the Januar, the Februar, and so on. But just like with the days of the week, you usually drop the article unless there is a reason to use it. And similar to days of the week, if you want to say in January or in March, you use im, which comes from in plus them. For example, es ist kalt im Januar. It's cold in January. Wir machen Urlaub im Juli. We go on vacation in July. So to quickly wrap it up, used with time, 7 Uhr at 7 o'clock. Im is used with months, im Juli, in July. And is used with days and dates. Am Montag, on Monday. Am 3. Juli, on the 3rd of July. We have covered quite a lot together so far. From the alphabet and pronunciation to greetings introductions and some key grammar basics like pronouns, verb conjugations, and sentence structure. Of course, 1 hour isn't enough to learn an entire language, but that's a lot already. And here is the thing. With a bit of dedication and regular practice, you will move past A1 before you even realize it. You just have to stay consistent. Even 30 minutes a day of practice can make a huge difference. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's honestly the best way to learn. Start small, build short, simple sentences, and say them out loud. Try introducing yourself or asking your friends easy questions in German. The more you use the language, the faster it will stick. And to make things easier, I've put together a complete beginner guide with all this information written down. You can download it for free from the link in the description below. If you remember, I told you I've got a little trick to help you memorize vocabulary, grammar, and everything else. So I've built a small web app that does exactly that. It helps you learn German using flashcards based on proven studying techniques like spaced repetition and active recall. You can check it out through the link in the description below. I hope this video has given you a solid foundation to start your German journey. I'm also thinking about making similar videos for the next levels in the future. So do subscribe to the channel. Danke schön for watching and bis zum nächsten Mal. Auf Wiedersehen.